Hey, Kelsey, how's it going?
It's great. How are you, Mendy?
I am awesome. So, welcome to the podcast, first of all, for starters. And tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, where to start? I'm a confidence and performance coach,
Okay.
and I help people break through the shoulds and the rules that hold them back so that they can own their unique greatness. I am also a triathlete, and I'm a nomad currently.
Awesome. Very cool. So, I think what caught my attention was the mental performance or performance coaching that you do, and B, the triathlete that you are. So, let's start with the triathlete and tell us how you got into that.
So I swam throughout high school and college, and then after college, I had started hearing about triathlon, and I started being interested in it. And my first year in grad school, brand new friend of mine, it was like day 2 of grad school, was like, "Hey, there's a triathlon, and I think it was like 2 weeks. Let's sign up." And I think before she said, "Let's sign up," I was like, "Oh, there's a triathlon. That'd be cool to do next year." Like, and she's like, "It's 2 weeks. Come on, you can do it." And I was like, "I haven't trained." But okay. So I committed to that. There was zero training beforehand. I knew I could swim fine. I had a mountain bike.
Mm-hmm.
So I mountain biked and ran. I have no idea how I finished. The next year or 2 years later, when I was doing my master's thesis, I really wanted something athletic to focus on. So I signed up for a triathlon, a sprint, and I actually found there were a lot of free training plans at the time. So I found a training plan online and I followed it. And I loved it. I loved it so much that I was like, "Can I do another one? Can I do one next weekend?" I was also still a grad student and had no money. I was like, "Oh, but this sport is so expensive. Why is it so expensive?" Before my first race, I did end up buying a road bike. But I bought it. So I went to grad school in North Carolina on the coast, and the closest bike shop was an hour away. And I'm 5'11", just shy of 6 feet.
Wow.
And the only bike that I took the only bike that fit me in that bike shop.
Wow. That's awesome. Were you running prior to triathlons, like marathons, half marathons?
No, I was a swimmer. I ran like a swimmer, very much.
Okay.
Like an
So when your first triathlon, you had no prior running knowledge before that?
No, I think I would go out for the occasional like 3-mile run, and I would be beat.
Wow.
Absolutely beat after that. Oh wait, I had started doing some 5Ks, but really they killed me.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was brutal.
Right.
I didn't really know what I was doing.
Right. So your first triathlon, were you like, okay, yeah, like no big deal? Or was it like, oh my God, what am I about to do?
I remember the pre-race meeting. So not talking about the one that was in grad school, because I don't remember. I think just zero thought went into that.
Mm.
But the one that I actually trained for, the pre-race meeting, it said it was mandatory. So we went. Like, that seemed really important. And people asked a whole lot of questions that I didn't even know what they meant. And then there were so many fancy bikes, and the fancy bikes made fancy noises. And that terrified me.
Right.
I was so intimidated.
What did that do to your confidence when you saw that?
It rocked my confidence. I was totally fine in this on the bike. I was just like, "Oh my God, I don't belong here." The run, I remember having a blast.
Mm-hmm.
And I did end up placing in my age group. So that also added to the,
This is totally up my street. Right?
Yeah, I definitely like this.
Wow. So how many have you run since the first one?
So my first one, the first one that we're counting now, the one I trained for, was in 2004.
Okay.
And I think the first few years I would do one a year. And now I do, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9 a year.
That's incredible. That's really incredible. Which one of those, if any, stand out the most for you? Whether it's something that, you felt inspired you, or something that you needed to push through that one, or something that you just loved about it the most?
Oh, wow. That's a really hard question. I can talk about this season because this season has been unique in many ways. This season I was sick during nationals, and like I woke up coughing, shaking, sweating, dizzy. I felt like absolute garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, maybe I shouldn't race. And like, if it had been a training day, I would have just stayed in bed.
Right.
And my husband was super helpful. He was like, you know, a do not start is the same as do not finish.
Right.
So why don't you just go start and see what happens? And so I did. And I finished.
Wow.
And I placed like 30th in my age group. I was hoping for a top 10
Right.
finish, but still there were like 200 people in my age group. So I was pretty psyched with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I raced again the next day in the sprint. It was an Olympic the first day and sprint the next day. Of crossing those finish lines, it meant a lot to me. I was super proud of myself for getting to the start and getting to the finish on both of those races. And that was something that I had taken my ability to start and finish for granted until that point.
Right.
So that definitely shifted my perspective.
Right.
And then this past weekend, I raced after crashing. I had my first crash and did not finish DNF 5 weeks ago. And the healing journey has been intense. And so I raced this past weekend knowing that I'm not fully healed. And that was also I was, again, so happy to cross that finish line. So proud of my body for finishing that one.
Yeah. I like, from being a runner a little bit, like I've done a couple half marathons, it's something that you don't find really anywhere else in your life, where you start, and first of all, the adrenaline that you get from just being at that starting line, you know that there's so many other people that are not doing what you're doing right now, or can't, whether it's because it's a physical disability or just because they're too lazy. And whatever happens after that shot or, start goes off, you just become so grateful. This is my personal experience, but you become so grateful. You're like, I'm here. I'm about to run 13 miles or 26 or 54 or whatever it is. And you just say, I'm about to run. And I'm just so grateful for the fact that I'm able to,
Yeah.
And then, like you said, the finish line's like, if you're running, obviously, to compete, it matters what your time is, but regardless what your time is, you just look at yourself, you're like, oh my God, like I just crossed the finish line. That's like, I'm so proud of myself,
Yeah, absolutely. I've had races where it's cold and rainy and pretty miserable. And the thought I have on my bike is races tend to happen pretty early in the morning on a weekend.
Right.
And I think there are people who are waking up super hungover right now. And I would so much rather, I'm so glad I went to bed at like 9 last night and got up at 4 this morning. And this is my happy place. I don't care that I'm freezing and wet right now.
Right. That's funny.
Gratitude can come from a lot of different places.
Yeah. So let's say you're having, because I know working with, athletes and performers, I find that a lot of times, especially during running, you could have blocks, right? Mental blocks, I call them, right? So what do you tell yourself, or how do you tell other people, whether it's in regards to confidence or just getting through a race? What kind of tools do you use to kind of push through and be resilient?
Well, so I think I'm probably going to go all over the place here. I think it's really key to stay present, and that can be really hard. In a triathlon, for instance, it's so easy to jump ahead to the next leg of the race.
Right.
Like while you're on the bike, jump ahead to the run.
Right.
That I've played with it a little bit when running around the track, jumping ahead, say I've got like 10 repeats of something, and jumping ahead to the next one mentally. And I slow down. Like I've checked my pace.
Right.
Whereas if I stay present, I'm faster. So staying present, I think, is the key. Maybe one of the most powerful things is that confidence is a choice. We tend to think that we earn confidence by doing things, by doing them already. Like, I'll be confident that I can run a marathon after I've run a marathon.
Right. Like repetition.
Yeah. But the thing is, first of all, if you run a marathon and you're training for a marathon, you might not be able to finish a marathon because you might be totally wrecked.
Right.
But we get to choose how we show up.
Right.
And if we show up present and grateful and confident, we're grounded and we're like in our own bodies.
Right.
I think endurance sports attract a lot of what would typically be called type A people, and people who want to plan. They want to know exactly how things are going to go. They want to know a very specific pace to hold and
right.
all of that.
Right. They have it down exactly what minute they're going to finish that marathon or triathlon.
Yeah. Which is great if they can hold to it. That can be great. I find that I really love being curious and being brave and just wondering what I'm capable of and then going and finding out. If I map out an entire race ahead of time and then I complete it exactly as planned, crossing the finish line is kind of a letdown because it's kind of like I already read that book.
Right.
Look.
And at the same time, if you don't finish at that time that you set, you become very disappointed with yourself. And it's almost like you just ran in vain, you know? Like,
exactly.
you're letting yourself down essentially.
Right? Yeah, you turn it into this pass-fail thing, and boom, you failed. Except maybe you actually PR'd,
right?
But you didn't PR by as much as you wanted to, or maybe you did. You most likely did something awesome at some point during that race,
right?
And when you turn it into that pass-fail, you completely miss that.
Right.
You miss that moment where, like, maybe you typically would jump ahead mentally, but you stayed present. You missed that moment where somebody passed you and you didn't give your power away. You just stayed right where you were supposed to stay.
Right. Yeah, that's so key. What kind of pre-performance routines do you do, whether mentally or physically?
I meditate.
Okay.
I usually use the Headspace app to help me, and then I kind of go from there. On race morning, I do use the Headspace app because I like that it's going to stop me. And then I also do a compassion meditation, and I remind myself that my energy is sacred. So I remind myself, like, especially on race morning, there's a whole lot of energy around. Some is positive to feed off, some is really negative. Some people get really riled up and angry and stressy, and I don't really like to be around them.
Right.
But it's about finding that balance where you are actually, like, hyped up, but not too much. Because sometimes you can go to the opposite effect and just be way too chill at the start line.
Right.
I've had that happen. Yeah. Or just, it's kind of like that border of aloofness and ambivalence and confidence.
Yeah, I think we all go through that.
Yeah.
I think it was my first race. I was like, I'm up at the start line with everybody, all the other runners that I didn't know are running, like, 4-minute miles.
Yeah.
And I'm like up there, like, yeah, like I'm good enough for you guys, And like a mile in, I'm like, oh my God, I'm totally gassed. But yeah, I think we all learn a lesson the hard way.
Absolutely.
That's funny. So meditation. What about physically?
Physically, I'll do some dynamic warm-ups. I usually, before a triathlon, I do like a 15-minute run and some drills and pickups. Okay. I don't usually get in the water. A lot of triathletes like to get in the water. So a lot of races you can't get on your bike ahead of time.
Okay.
Because your bike has to stay in transition area. I don't typically get in the water because I freeze. So unless it's a really hot race with warm water, I won't get in because it costs me too much in shivering.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. So just going back to meditation real quick, tell me, go through like a short, like, what would your meditation look like before a race?
It's usually, I don't visualize. I used to visualize, and I'd like to get back on visualizing.
Yeah, it's worked for me, actually, interestingly enough. But,
I have tried it, and it has worked in the past, but Sometimes I find I can get too caught up in my head with visualizing. Again, it gets to that, like, I want to be open to possibilities for my race.
Mm-hmm.
If I visualize too much, I feel like I lock into it. It's definitely something I want to play with more.
Mm-hmm.
So I just tend to visualize or meditate, just focusing on my breath, just really simple, completely unrelated to the race.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I say completely unrelated to the race because usually I'm just focusing on like rising as I breathe in, falling as I exhale. If a mantra comes to me, I might use that and I might keep it with me. Okay, so we're talking about pre-race meditation, but I do kind of meditate while I race. Like
Yeah, I was
be
gonna say, like I was watching the New York Marathon with my dad, and he's like, "Are they like?" He's like, he asked me, he's like, "Would you say they're in the zone right now?" I'm like, "Look at their face, like they're totally in a trance. You know, they're not looking at anybody specific. They're not looking at the road. They're just looking like straight ahead, and they're just sort of in like this trance where nothing else matters. Like you said, just besides for the present moment." I'm like, you tell me if they're in the zone. Like, come on. But
yeah,
it's really true. And, you know, it's interesting that a lot of people use running as a therapy, right? You know, you had a bad day or you're going through something tough. Go out and run a couple miles. And it's just such a great way to clear your head. You know, some people use music. Some people use no music. But it's such a beautiful way to just clear your head in that way.
I tend to repeat random things in my head when I run. I do a lot of counting. I don't count steps. I don't count breaths. I count to 4. It doesn't match up with anything. Sometimes I count to 8.
Just continuously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah. Like that's basically when I'm in flow, I'm counting.
Interesting.
When I'm in the zone, I'm counting. I used to, sometimes it's been, I'll repeat something random, like a number, and then I'll be like, what does this even mean? And if I'm doing repeats or something, I'll come back and be like, oh, that was the number of the house I started at. I just like had internalized that. Wow. And I just repeat it over and over again.
That's interesting. So someone once told me, they said that when you count out of order, your mind can't focus on meaning when you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then you're able to concentrate on something else at the same time because it's subconscious. Counting to 10 you can do in your sleep, right? But when you count out of order, so let's say it's 1, 28, 32, that requires so much concentration that you can't focus on something else at that same time. So sometimes when I'm running and I'm starting to find, like whether it's a cramp, if I haven't run in a long time and I'm going out, I'm like, oh my God, this is brutal. Then I'll start counting out of order. And it doesn't allow you to think about whatever it is that you think is holding you back, whether it's mentally or whether it's physically, whether it's something's hurting you or whether you just start telling yourself, oh my God, okay, I'm just going to stop. Or should I keep on going? Or like you said, should I race today? Should I not race today? And when you start doing that, you're like, okay, look, I'm counting and that's the only thing that's on my mind. So that interestingly works.
That's so interesting. I wonder, I might play with that. I also wonder, because numbers are meaningless to me when I count, I just kind of catch, it's like in the back of my mind, I'm aware that I'm counting.
Uh-huh.
I don't set out, like the gun doesn't go off and I'm not like 1, 2, 3, 4. It just, it happens. Like it's something my brain is doing by itself.
Right.
I'm not telling it to do that.
Yeah. Interesting. Another thing I'll do sometimes is, which is similar to the thing I do previously, but I'll like play blackjack in my head. So I'll be like, okay, I just drew a jack, which is 10, and then I drew a 7, 17, should I stay, should I go? And it's the same idea where the numbers are not, they're not consecutive. And it's, you know, you're getting an 18, and then if you hit, you just bring up a number intuitively. Okay, what's that number? It's a 9. Okay, should I stay, should I hit? What does the other guy have? And like, you just start, you know, having fun in your head. And before you know it, you finish the race, you know?
That is hilarious. So how many blackjack games have you won while you're racing?
I don't know. Maybe like, well, it depends what you're counting like, winning, but I'll just keep on going. Like, okay, yeah, I beat that one, you know, or as long as, sometimes I'll even play with myself. Like as long as I don't bust, you know, if I hit over 21, then I lose, you know, even if there's no dealer, but it's just something to get off your mind, because sometimes there are those mental things that get in your head. Like, oh my God, like whether it's the climate or whether, like you said, or whether it's the rain or whether it's cold or whether it's hot. Like there's so many different factors that come into play when it comes to performing. And it's not just running and, biking and swimming. It could be basketball, football, baseball, performing at Carnegie Hall. Like there's so many different things that come up, and it's just a matter of how well are you conditioned to be able to snap out of that, and what tools do you have to be able to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do to help me get over this hurdle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so curious with this blackjack idea. I can't wait to go try it.
Yeah, it's funny.
Did you come up with it by yourself?
Yeah, I did. Well, so the other counting thing I heard from someone, I forgot who it was, but the blackjack I did come up with myself.
After my crash, they asked me to recite the months backwards, and which is hard, a lot harder than it sounds.
Sure.
And that, I wonder if that too would have the same effect as like counting out of order, because you really have to think.
Right. Interesting.
Get that right.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's funny. I was going to tell you a story real quick that I heard. Siri Lindley, you ever heard of her?
So, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, world-class triathlete, retired now, and she was on a podcast once, and she said that she used to visualize, and this is before she ever even dreamed about doing a marathon. She's like, yeah, a triathlon. It's like, that's a joke to me, right? And then she's like, you know what, I'm going to try it. And she starts training, and then she ended up going to some wacky place for a bunch of months. I forgot how many. And she had like a trainer, and they used to wake up every single morning and go out and train. And she said there were physical training and then there was mental training. And part of her mental training was visioning. So she would wake up every single day and vision herself going through the Olympics of the triathlon or the swimming, whatever it was, and vision that so that when she actually does get to her performance, it becomes very familiar. That's based in, backed by psychology, and a lot of mental performance coaches know that. So she tried that, right? And then she did it for 365 days. For a whole year before, she visioned every single day, her going through, the swimming pool and, being in first place the whole entire time and winning the race in the time that she wanted. And the day of the race came, and she was really nervous. And she takes a leap into the pool, and before she knows it, she blacks out. And she wakes up, and she realized that she collided with somebody else into the pool. And she looks up, and she sees that she's in last place right away. And she kind of, shook it off and just finished the triathlon. And afterwards, they asked her, they said, what happened? She said, I collided with someone, but that was just a minor thing. But what really happened was I visioned this for 365 days. And the problem with what I visioned was that I didn't vision everything that could have happened. I only visioned what I wanted to happen. I never visioned what if, my bike breaks, or what if I tweak my ankle while I'm running, or what if all these little things. And if she would have done that, she would have been able to bounce back and, and been ready for that, as opposed to just so many athletes are like, yeah, I'm just going to finish in record timing and it's going to be so easy. But we forget about the times that it's not. And we never really take that into consideration. And then when it does happen, we're not used to it. We're like, oh my God, this is so new. And what do? You start freaking out, whether that's anxiety or whether that's just dents the rest of your race or whatever it is.
That's so interesting. And I've recently heard about a lot of people getting concussions or blacking out or something else during the swim. The first I've ever heard of it this year. Yeah. Pretty scary.
Yeah. And another thing about visioning, it's like, to me, it's so fascinating, but there was a race I did. I was well prepared. And then I had another one about a month later. And I thought, I'm not going to train between this past one, and the one coming up. The only thing I'm going to do is mental training. And I thought, I'm going to do visioning exercises and see how well that works out without training physically at all. I know they did a study with free throws in basketball. They took 3 groups, and one was doing mental training only, one was doing both, and one was doing just with no mental training. And the results were very positive in regards to the visioning. So I thought I'd try that out. So I did that. And the day of the race came, and, I was well prepared because I was prepared from the month before, but I didn't do any training before that. And I ended up beating my PR by like, I think it was 8 minutes, which was really good. Yeah, I was really impressed. So it's definitely very effective. I love using it.
I got to get back on it. So I have to confess, I help my clients visualize.
Mm-hmm.
I make recordings sometimes for people to visualize, but I just don't like taking myself through it. I should probably pay somebody else to make a recording for me,
right?
that I could listen to.
That's funny. So tell me, let's say someone comes to you and going through, I want to call it a confidence crisis, but I don't know what you call it. What's your 2 cents to them? What would be the quick fix?
Well, there is no quick fix. It totally depends what the issue is. Are we talking about an athlete here who's having
Yeah, let's start with an athlete.
Okay. Well, I'd want to know, I guess what I would say is having no other information. A lot of athletes I find have that confidence crisis when they lose their why. They forget why they're doing this sport, or they never really had a reason, and all of a sudden that's showing up.
Right.
So I would bring them back to why they do it.
Right. Yeah, and that's so important. I just released a book, and that's one of the chapters in the book is what's your why? And I bring a couple stories from professional sports where when the athlete's why was very vibrant, that's when they saw the most success in their performance. And I think it's so underrated in athletics, but it's so important. When you have that why, you're almost like you're invincible, really. You're on automatic. Like there's nothing that can stop you. It's really, really incredible.
Yeah, I think people, especially people struggling to like get out the door in a workout, if you have a why, there's no struggle. That's just what you do.
Right.
And
as I always laugh that I always say that like the more struggle you have, the luckier you are, because sometimes that's what drives you. You know, when someone's running because of something, whether they're running in tribute to somebody, which they can see as a setback or they can see as a tragedy. For like, you think Boston Marathon, for example, when something like a tragedy like that happened, you had so many runners that became so much more devoted and motivated and I want to say ambitious toward running, because now that you're running for a reason, you know, it's not about me anymore. It's not about my PR. It's not about me crossing that finish line. This is about something so much greater than myself. It's about a society. It's about a community. It's about doing something for someone other than myself, which it eliminates ego, which allows you to perform out of your physical body's limitations, which is really incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure this has been proven too, when we are doing something for something bigger than ourselves, that's the breakthrough sessions.
Right.
I mean, look at Shalene Flanagan, her win in New York City. I'm pretty sure she was doing that for all the American distance women. That wasn't just her.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I was about to say something, but I just slipped my mind. But it's so true. It's really true. When that why is vibrant, you're really unstoppable, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that why it can change, and it probably will throughout your athletic career. And that why can be something big. It can be like for your country or your family or people you've lost. It can certainly be for yourself. It can be for your past self. It can also just be for love and fun.
Right.
I think when we recognize our sports, our play, that can be the why right there, just to play. I'm always a little taken aback when people don't have much play in their lives. They don't really understand that, because play is a huge part of my life.
Right.
And that's what I do every day when I'm training.
Right.
And even meditating, like meditation is a source of play for me.
Right.
Just
and
see
I
what
think,
happens.
yeah, and I think especially in 2017, where there's so many other things that are being, I want to say The word's not coming, but the word, we think things are important, more important than they really are. You know, we stop and we don't give attention to ourselves as much as we should. You know, for a runner, for example, when they run, they kind of get into this zone where they are like, this is for me, or this is for my health, or this is for just me clearing my mind. This is my style therapy. That is so important for someone to really prioritize that, and not just, you know, oh, I can't run today because of blank, or I can't run because of this, but really take that. And that, like you said, that could be your why. That could really bring you to that next level, whether it's in running or even in your life, because you value it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also, athletics are a way to connect to our body. And I think that when we're connected with our bodies, that helps us come back to present.
Right.
So I think, you know, whatever drives you in your sport can also drive you in all of your life.
Right. I think it was Will Smith that said, he said, if you run 5 miles every single day, there is no doubt in my mind you'll be successful, because running is just a metaphor for a lot of other things in your life. Meaning, when you can endure running, when you don't want to run, that conditions your mind to endure other things that you don't want to do, enabling you to really get through it, even though you don't want to, right? So like when we're running, we're like, oh my God, I just don't want to get up and run today. And you go out and run today, that's conditioning your mind to say, I'm not going to listen to the voices inside of my head that are telling me that I'm too tired, I'm not interested, I can't do it, it's too cold, it's too hot, the water is too cold, I'm going to chill, I'm going to get frozen, it's going to make me a crappy day, whatever it is. When we go out and do that anyway, and then the next time something comes up that has nothing to do with athletics, and we do it anyway, that is directly connected to that run that we did. And it's so true.
I think showing up becomes a practice.
Right.
It becomes like, why would you not?
Right.
I just can't comprehend that.
Right.
If you want to improve, why would you not do the work? Why would you think that even just taking one day off,
right,
not including like a rest day, resting is doing the work as well?
Right.
Why would you do the work if you want the outcome?
Right.
Why wouldn't you?
You mentioned resting is work. Do you find that either you or others that you know would try to overwork themselves because they were trying to reach that next plateau, but they didn't realize that resting is part of it?
Oh, absolutely. I come from a swimming background, and in swimming, you just do the yards. Yardage. And I think it's also human nature. When we want something, it makes sense to like go do the work. I'm in off season right now, and yesterday was a day off. That's like my 4th day off this year. Today I just ran for 30 minutes. This is hard. This is even though my body is so tired, and racing while healing over the weekend, I seriously wanted to nap through the whole race, because like just this healing is exhausting,
right,
which is something I had no idea about. But even though I feel the fatigue, even though I know I need to rest to heal, even though I know I need to rest I know that the rest will pay off. I know that my body needs to rest for a few weeks before it can go back to work. I want to do work because I got big goals.
Right.
And so it's something to wrap my head around, to be like, you know, I want to go run hard and hit the paces that I want to hit for next season. But I know that it's going to be more beneficial for me to sit on my butt.
Right.
To sleep in.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's so common where in so many different athletic fields, you know, so like even like in basketball, me being a basketball player, like, you know, you'll tweak your ankle and you'll try to come up too early. You try to come back too early from the injury, and you'll be like, yeah, it's fine. You know, I'll walk it off. And we try to tell ourselves that we're tougher than we really are, or than our body needs. And forcing ourselves not to rest, or forcing ourselves to come back too early, is more detrimental than it is sitting out and going through that, because we just, in our minds, we tell ourselves, okay, yeah, you're better than that. You know, like you're really good. You know, you don't need all that rest. And that's where the damage really is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's also that feeling of missing. You're missing, like you're not getting better right now.
Right.
You're not becoming a stronger athlete. So just suck it up and push through it.
Right.
And I had an experience this summer where I tweaked my ankle trail running, and this is kind of new for me to learn just to niggle, wait, like take a few days off from running, still do what you can do, but give it time, and then, oh, you know what, it gets better.
Mm-hmm.
It's so satisfying to see that, and then you can hit the work hard.
Right.
But it still goes against, like, you know, I'm like, oh, can't we just wrap it up and just go?
Right.
But the body does heal when you listen to the early warning signs. Then sometimes stuff heals in a day.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So if you could say one thing to athletes across the board, or even performers, that everyone would hear, what would that one message be?
You are worthy.
Okay. Want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, you're worthy of being the best. You're worthy of the big dreams. You're worthy of hiring the best coach. You're worthy of pushing yourself. You're worthy of being on the stage all by yourself. You are worthy of being the spotlight. You're worthy of being the best in any moment. Let yourself shine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
I have so many other things I'd like to say too, though.
You can say one more if you want.
Well, I guess I kind of wrapped the self-love in there, but also it's just presence. Presence is a game changer. And I think, like, whether it's jumping ahead just by a second, or if it's like looking ahead to the next year, the next couple of years, stay where you are.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff takes time. Growth takes time. And it sometimes feels like other people just take off and leave you behind. And maybe they are, in a sense, but you've got your own path. You're going to get there. Just keep showing up and doing the work.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing in everything that we talked about today is that they're all applicable to every part of your life. You know, like you just said, you're worthy, and patience, and just, you know, fight through it. That's so true in everything. It's true if you get laid off. It's true in a relationship. It's true in sports. It's true in so many different, and the listeners can think for themselves where it's applicable to them, but it really is in so many different facets of their life, where, you know, where are you pushing too hard, or where do you just need to stop and be present, or where do you just need to stop and be patient, or where do you just need to stop and say, okay, it's fine, I'll be okay, you know, or I'm worthy enough to get this job or to be with this person. It's so amazing how each of those things, everything we talked about, is really as diverse as it is. It's applicable in so many different areas.
Yeah, I find that, I remember right when I started coach training, talking about this, I find like I learned so much through sports, and then I translate it to the rest of my life.
Right.
Because it all works. But I learn it when whether I'm on the struggle bus during a workout, or I'm actually like totally in flow. When I'm connected with my body, that's where I really learn the lessons. Because I don't learn it when somebody tells me. That doesn't
Does anybody
cut it for me? I don't think so.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Kelsey. This was really fun.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be in touch.
All right.